Welcome to Spokane Talks Media and the Conversation Starter, getting past the sound bites and taking you out into the field. For May 2021, we're focused on homelessness. In our first conversation with Patricia Kienholz, who has lived downtown in Spokane for 20 years and calls those folks her neighbors. And a second conversation with Darin Watkins of the Spokane REALTORS Association on the challenges of providing homes for everyone. Well, I wanted to talk with you, Patricia, because you live downtown, and we had a good conversation about you and the neighbors. People are surprised to find out that people do live downtown in pretty ordinary-looking houses like yours. Tell me about how you found the neighborhood when you first moved here 20 years ago.
Well, when I first moved here, there was no one that lived downtown, hardly. My parents had the building since 1958, and Mrs. Paulson lived in the Paulson building. Yeah. And we used to bring Christmas presents to her, but pretty much there weren't very many other people. There were a few. I could kind of count the people that were putting in lofts. You had people who were living in low-income housing, and I think it's easy to separate in your mind, and these people become kind of invisible because there's sex offender buildings, you know, where people are being housed within a few blocks, and so. I
think that variety of income levels and situations downtown is what people don't really think about. It has that great variety and diversity that other neighborhoods might not have.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's, oh, I wouldn't go there, but I think over the years we've really tried to focus on integrating everybody, and so when I moved here, I approached it like, this is my neighborhood. When I moved here, I moved from San Francisco, and I'd lived in downtown San Francisco and downtown LA. And so I knew that people could put lofts in, and I had the opportunity because my mom owned a building. But when I realized I was going to be here semi-permanently, basically, and I had 2 kids, and I was raising 2 kids by myself, I really wanted there to be more vibrancy, so I started encouraging different friends in my network, people to invest down here, to start businesses, to purchase buildings, and that has happened. Sometimes someone has to pass away for like the cracker building next door to come available, but it's taken a lot of faith for people to decide to put their money into projects like that. Mm-hmm. And then now we're dealing with such an uptick in homelessness and addiction issues downtown that I know a lot of those people are kind of having second thoughts or feeling like, how are we going to fix this and continue to make this a livable, walkable neighborhood when you've got all of the social problems that are coming along with unsheltered, unhoused people.
There's different issues, and I think you've seen some of that change over the last 20 years from what the typical population might have been of those who were sleeping out mm-hmm. to what you're seeing today.
Yeah, definitely. It used to just be alcoholics. So that was the drug of choice for a lot of people, and you would basically see elderly men with shopping carts going up and down the street, maybe going to get food. Sort of miraculously, one of those men, there was a couple, a black guy and a white guy that used to walk up and down the street every day to go to the House of Charity, and the black guy disappeared. So I don't know if he passed away or what happened to him, but he really couldn't talk. He probably had some kind of aphasia or something, but he would leave gifts on my porch and food and hamburgers. If people gave him food, he would leave them on my porch and leave money in my mailbox, and they'd sit over at the cracker building kind of on their stopway. And then the black guy disappeared, and then I didn't see the white guy, and I was kind of sad about that because they were my neighbors and they were people that I waved to and thought about quite a bit. I often leave food and things like that outside that people take. People would be surprised that, if you leave a pizza outside, it's gone within a short period of time. You'll have other people who say, oh, well, don't feed them. And it's like, well, it's going in the garbage otherwise. So our family, you know, a lot of times if they're trying to get drugs, they're going to come into your house and they're going to steal from you, and they'll tell you that. I talk with a lot of homeless people, and you know, they'll say, you don't let us into your house because we're looking to take something. So there are so many complexities, and I think everybody who is dealing with it, you start with heart, because everything you do, you should really do it with heart, or you should just get out and go do something else. Most of the people that are working in the field do get some kind of burnout. The social workers get a lot of burnout. And that's a problem, because you lose institutional knowledge as people burn out and go to different careers. Then the people can just end up really siloed, and there isn't a lot of communication between them, or they're basically approaching things as a individual stakeholder. So if you're law enforcement and you have restrictions where, you know, you're adhering to the law, right? I live here. I can go outside and I can yell at someone, or I can be nice to them. I don't have any expectations that I'm supposed to be at a higher level like law enforcement and abide by things. I can choose myself how I want to treat people, and I want to treat other people in a Christian way, and I want to treat them the way I would want to be treated. But I'm also not naive that a lot of the people down here are criminals. They're looking to rob you. They are coming to your house to open the door on a regular basis to go inside and steal something.
I know you've had that problem
They're looking for
recently.
bikes. I mean, they're looking for drugs. There's all kinds of stuff going on. So I guess you just have to be kind of open-minded if you want to live in a place like this. You know, I think they're trying, but it's not happening.
It's getting through the silos. As you
Right.
said, that's part of an issue, because everyone sees just their little piece of it, and the people who live in the neighborhood, you and the whole range of neighbors, are the ones who see that full picture and know what's missing for them.
Right. It's an education issue. You know, I think if you were to look at Mayor Condon and ask him, you know, where was he when he first came in, and as opposed to where he was 8 years later, just trying to educate the mayor about what the problems are, in order for the mayor to make some administrative decisions, to present a different budget to the council, and then to get the buy-in from the council. I personally don't think that could even be done with a one-term mayor. It just takes a lot of time and work. So unless the person came from those fields, and because the fields are so siloed, integrating everything, it just seems really problematic. And I think that's why these conversations are starting, like what you're doing, or what Chud Wendell is doing. I think we're trying to bring some of the voices to the table that typically aren't showing up. After being here 20 years, I'm at the point where I've heard all of it, and I only want to hear the things that are solutions-based, driven. You know, so they're taking action. They're proven. So that's a problem, is figuring out who is doing things the right way. One of the complaints I've heard from my partner recently is just how often he sees things locally where the people are using Seattle or Portland or cities where we travel to frequently and go, this is a mess. They're not doing this right. So we don't want to hear any more from them. We're done. To me, they had their chance. Let's shift over to some of these different cities who are really being effective about what they're doing. And then, you know, further, there's a whole criminal law enforcement piece to it. There's a drug piece to it. So my opinion is they're going to go where the drugs are, and as long as we're continuing to allow all of this drug use and drug distribution, you know, it's one thing to say, well, we don't want you to go to prison if you have a small quantity of drugs, and we're going to put you in treatment. That's fine and good. But what about, where are those drugs coming from?
Yeah.
And who's doing something about that?
That's where the circles start to overlap between different problems. Homelessness becomes then a symptom of some other problem that has to be solved.
You know, living down here, I do think it's more complicated than that. I think every single person is an individual, and when you start, I tell people a lot of the time, start talking to them, because that's where you'll find out their stories and what they're dealing with. And I know you're looking at all of these different populations, but one example is I had a woman here once, and she was a tribal member, so she had come down here from the reservation, and she had what she called a payee, somebody who manages money for her. And she was a sex offender, so she couldn't be in any of the shelters that had children, and so she was on the street because she couldn't be where she wanted
really
to
pushed
be.
out of the system.
And you know, just when you're talking to people, you want to maintain their dignity. So you know, you listen to their stories. Then you have to realize that they're peppered with lies. So there's that. There are delusions that are part of their problems, and there are personality factors at play. So, you know, really getting to know them and knowing how many people are on your streets, and I think the police are pretty good at that. They kind of know who's down here. So, but the ones who don't want your help, I don't blame them. I've had this conversation too. If you can get out of jail and make $2,000 in one day by picking up drugs on street cred and then going and slinging drugs and making $2,000 in a day, why are you going to go into a services program and make minimum wage through a work program? You're not going to. So that we're saying we're offering opportunities for these people, you know,
It's not really
compared to what they're doing,
not
they
competitive.
they don't see it as an opportunity. They see it as a demotion. And we just, I think probably some of the administrators in the city or the county, they need to listen to people like me or to the developers who are complaining. They need to listen to those complaints and take them seriously and filter them down and find out what the solutions are. And I mean, you can't explain to me why I've been here 20 years and I have asked for a trash can to be put on the corner at least a dozen times. And I've been told, oh yeah, we can do that, blah, blah, blah. Nothing, there's no garbage can. And why is something simple like a garbage can so hard for us as a community to figure out how to get done? Or why is it so hard to get the street sweepers to use their water function on their street sweepers so that the streets are cleaner? Why is it so hard to have a discussion about changing who is responsible for the sidewalks down here and hiring more people? You know, because the focus is on everybody getting something for free. How can we complain about the homeless people who want something for free when our own government is looking for a handout? It gets to be really comical.
What does somebody who doesn't live downtown need to know about living downtown?
That it's a neighborhood, that this is a neighborhood just like any other neighborhood, and that I mean, that's it. It's just a neighborhood. It's a neighborhood made up of people.
If you wouldn't want it in your neighborhood, then why should you ask the downtown neighborhood to put up with it?
Definitely, that's definitely an issue. I mean, it's okay to say, to have a difference between an urban neighborhood and a more rural neighborhood, or a single family neighborhood. A single family neighborhood is not the same as what we have down here. But that being said, there isn't a reason why in an urban neighborhood you should have to live with filth and garbage and health things that are concerning to your health, there should be functional ways to clean up those things, and there are, and we're not utilizing them. And that's why people don't like it. That's why people don't want to come downtown, because they see what's going on, and the coordination is lacking. So I think we have to coordinate, and I think we have to organize better, and I think that the city council needs to stop being so political and actually start listening to people who aren't of their same politics but have some good ideas.
And just listen to everybody in the neighborhood.
Right.
Okay. Thank you, Patricia.
You're welcome.
Patricia and her neighbors need simple services: clean streets, trash pickup, simple restroom facilities to keep their neighborhood livable. Darin Watkins has some insights to share on the housing challenge and how it affects neighbors and neighborhoods across the city. So I'm with Darin Watkins, who's from the Spokane Association of REALTORS.
Thank you.
And I wanted to ask you, from your expertise, to explain some things about the housing market, about how it's not just about building affordable housing, it's about building housing at all levels.
We don't have any homes for sale. We have literally seen a reduction in housing and available housing in the last 10 years by almost 90%. Just the number of available houses at all levels. And that's important because when you build a new house, my father used to build houses, and he used to say, you build a new house, 3 families get a new place to live. Because someone sold their old house to buy that new house. Somebody in a rental bought the old house, and somebody living in mom and dad's basement got to move into the apartment. Yeah. So there is a flow to it. And if there are no homes for sale, the market's frozen.
Okay.
What we have here, though, is so we gather a group of experts from around the country and the region, and we ask them this question: what's going on in Spokane? And the answer they gave us was that you haven't built a home in the city of Spokane in close to 10 years. And so as a result of that, you have new people moving in, you have families staying, and what happens? There's no place to go. And you are seeing the results of that now in the house prices. When you have a year-to-year house price going up 18%, that's a scary number. It's great if you already have a house, right? You feel pretty good about your investment. But for the people who don't have a home, which is about 45% of us, that's a scary notion.
So all of the solutions that look at just increasing density with ADUs, are those
infill, density, all those words, yep.
All those buzzwords. Is that going to do it?
So people ask me, what's the simple solution? Is it density? Is it expanding our footprint? What is it? And the answer is yes, yes, and yes. It's all of those things. It took us a long time to get into this situation. Sad to say, it's going to take us a long time to get out.
But we all want instant solutions, don't we?
Well, and you think about this. So growth management put a tight boundary about where we can build. So there's only really 2 options. You can add more homes into the same small space, or you can build up. And right now in the city of Spokane, you can't do either.
So what do you see happening in this next year? What would you like to see happen in this next year?
I think that people are starting to recognize that we are in a crisis. We are in a true housing crisis. And the number of people that are suffering from that crisis grows exponentially. The experts we brought to the table were identifying who gets hurt the most by those lack of housing opportunities. And it's a broad spectrum. It's those who are stuck in rentals, who can't get out, who'd like to buy a home. We identified that half of the people who are currently renting in Spokane County are actively trying to buy a house, but there's nothing for sale. And when I say nothing, so as we record that, we currently have about 150 homes for sale in the entire Spokane County. This time, 10 years ago, we had maybe 2,800. And what ends up happening is you look at that number out of that 150 homes, how many homes are there for sale, say under 250,000, FHA qualified? About 3. So think about that number. 45,000 people trying to buy 3 homes.
Yeah.
What do you think does to the prices?
I think we're all seeing that. So that's why I've called one group of the people that are affected by the whole homelessness issue and all of its aspects is those who are priced out.
And what's interesting, one of the things that happened in this summit that we held was we had a Whitworth professor who was talking about the social impacts of our housing crisis. And what she identified was if you look at that model of how people get into homelessness, it's sort of like there are traumas and there are drug uses and there are issues that get them to that place where they become homeless. But in Spokane, it's just the opposite. It's that in many cases, unlike many markets, in Spokane, the homelessness becomes the first piece. They lose their housing for whatever reason, and suddenly trying to find that other place to live is almost impossible, especially when you have vacancy rates at or below 1%. That's a dangerous level for any market.
Okay, well that's not good news, but it's an important piece of the picture for everybody to understand.
Right. The important is that it is absolutely paramount that we have more housing in the Spokane area. One of the builders in town said to me something a few years ago that I had to really think about, but it's honestly true, that every major social ill facing Spokane right now is tied to housing. The number of people who own homes versus those who don't. The number of people who are of color, who make up a far greater portion of that, don't have. The number of students who perform badly in schools, the number of marriages that fail, the health impacts. These are all very well documented statistics, and yet they all tie back to the exact same issue, a lack of housing.
Homelessness is a complex issue. It's going to take many, many community conversations. Start a conversation today.